welcome back to my channel. My name is Darian and today I am going to be doing my September wrap-up. So September wasn't the best reading month for me. I only managed to read 5 books in September. That's mostly due to the fact that I went back to school in September and I had less time to read. I started off the month pretty strong, but my classes started the second week of September and that's when everything kind of went downhill. But in case you guys didn't see my September TBR or any of my vlogs from September, I did participate in the Bookoplathon readathon, which was hosted by Becca from Becca and the Books. I will leave her link down below. And that readathon was so much fun. I wish I could have read more for it because I really loved doing the rolls for it. I only got to do 4 and the last roll I didn't even finish the book in September, so that won't be part of this wrap up. That'll be in October, that last book I finished. But anyway, so I do want to keep her board around and then use it just because I think I might add a prompt to my prompt jar to like use the Bookopoly board. I don't know. But it was a really fun readathon and I'm really glad I participated. And I also kind of participated in the Stranger Things readathon, which was hosted by a lot of great people, but mainly my girl Lisa. Like I've said, this is a Lisa stan account, but I was on the Scoops Troops team and we came in second, which I think it was rigged, but anyways, so yeah. So like I mentioned, I read 5 books in September, which is probably the least amount of books I've read in a while. But I feel like considering I started school, that's not too bad. And I did read some pretty good books this month, so let's just get into them. So the first book that I read in September was Torch Against the Night by Sabaa Tahir. This is the second book in the Ember and the Ashes trilogy. It's not a trilogy. The Ember and the Ashes series. The last book is coming out in December and I just got the 3rd book in the mail, so I'm excited to continue the series because, first of all, this is the first book that I've ever tabbed and look at all my tabs. Oh my gosh. I had so much fun tabbing this, and I also wrote, I'm not quite at the step to like write directly in my books yet, so I wrote some post-it notes in it, which I had a lot of fun doing that. So if you've never tried tabbing your books, I highly recommend because I had a lot of fun. And this was a great first book to tab because I felt lots of emotions reading this. This was such a good sequel to the first book. I think I liked this one a bit better than the first one, but I love the first one. But I gave this 4.5 stars. The only thing that was stopping me from giving this 5 stars was in the first book we only, oh, I didn't even explain what this is about. Okay, so for some reason I can never explain what the first book is about. Like, I don't know what it is about it, but I never explain it well, so I'm gonna find the synopsis on Goodreads and read that because I don't know what it is, but I just, every time I try to explain it without looking at the synopsis, my brain is like, have you read this book? I don't think so. Okay, so this is the synopsis of the first book. Also, I was watching Sabaa Tahir's Instagram stories recently and she said how the 2 main characters' names are pronounced, and I realized I've been saying them wrong this whole time. So I've been saying Leia, but it's Laya, and instead of Elias, it's Elias. Or Eli, it sounded like she said Elias, so it might be Elias or Elias. I don't know why like when I say Elias, like my brain wants to say Elias. Anyways. So this is the synopsis for the first book. So, Laya is a slave, Elias is a soldier. Neither is free. Under the martial empire, defiance is met with death. Those who do not vow their blood and bodies to the emperor risk the execution of their loved ones and the destruction of all they hold dear. It is in this brutal world, inspired by ancient Rome, that Laya lives with grandparents and older brother. The family ekes out an existence in the empire's impoverished back streets. They do not challenge the empire. They've seen what happens to those who do. But when Laya's brother is arrested for treason, Laya is forced to make a decision. In exchange for help from rebels who promise to rescue her brother, she will risk her life to spy for them from within the empire's greatest military academy. There, Laya meets Elias, the school's finest soldier, and secretly its most unwilling. Elias wants only to be free from the tyranny he's been trained to enforce. He and Laya will soon realize that their destinies are intertwined and that their choices will change the fate of the empire itself. So that's what the first book is about, and the first book is amazing. I highly recommend. I find that the series is pretty popular, but up to booktube standards, I find it's really underrated. So I think you guys should all pick up the series because it's so good. And the second book basically picks up right where the first book left off. Like, I think it's literally the same day, and this book just doesn't stop. Like, you're in it and it never slows down. I can't say too much because it is the second book, so I don't want to spoil the first one, but there's just so much that happens in this book. And I remember when I finished it, like, I had started reading at like 9 o'clock at night, and I was like, oh, I still have like almost 200 pages left, I'm probably not gonna finish it tonight. And then I stayed up until 2 to finish it because I just like, I literally was so stressed I could not go to sleep because I would just be too stressed to sleep anyways, so I just had to stay up to find out what happened. And oh my gosh, there's just so much that happens in this book. It is so amazing. So I really love this. 4.5 stars, and I can't wait to read the third book, and I can't wait for it to break my heart. The second book I read in September was Full Disclosure by Cameron Garrett, and as you can see, I tabbed this one too. This was one of my favorite books of the month. It was so good. I gave it 5 stars, which I don't give YA contemporaries 5 stars very often. Like, the only other one I can think of is Radio Silence. But this book was so good. I loved it so much. So this book is about a young girl named Simone. Oh my god, I forgot her name. It's about a young girl named Simone, and she is HIV positive, and she mainly keeps this a secret because she's worried about how other people will react, because she had a really bad experience at her old school when some people found out. So at her new school, she doesn't tell anyone that she's HIV positive, and so far this is working out fine until she meets a guy that she's interested in and she thinks might be interested in her back. And so she is starting to think about sex, and if sex, you know, if that's going to be part of their relationship, then she has to come forward to him about how she has HIV, and so she's really nervous about that. So the book is about that. It is about her relationship with her friends. It is about, she's also the like assistant director of her high school musical, and the amount of times, like, she is such a theater nerd, which makes me so happy because I am also such a theater nerd. I did the musical at my high school every single year. It was so, like, I loved all the theater references in this book, and she talks about theater a lot. So if you love theater, I think you will really love this book because I really loved it. So yeah, so I thought this was written so well. I love Cameron Garrett's writing. Like, the amount of quotes that I tabbed was a lot because I just loved it so much. And I find often with YA contemporaries, like, I find often the characters can get really annoying because they're teenagers, and obviously teenagers are annoying, but like, they're not always annoying. Like, sometimes, you know, sometimes you can stand them. And I find what a lot of authors do is, you know, they're adults writing in the minds of teenagers, so they just are like, oh, this is probably what they would say, like, YOLO, you know. But I thought that she was really good at being in the mind of a teenager and making her sound real instead of like a caricature of a teenager, you know. So I really loved her writing, and this book has amazing representation. So our main character, Simone, she is questioning whether or not she's bisexual. She has one of her best friends is bisexual. She has another best friend who is ace and a lesbian, and she also has 2 dads. Like, there's so many different what's the word, identities in this book, and it was just really amazing, and I really loved it. So I would really highly recommend this book. Even if you feel like you don't like YA contemporaries, I feel like everyone would love this. And also, the ending made me cry. It was just so good. So yeah, I highly recommend this one. Okay, the next book I read in September was, ta-da! I finally read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I have been putting this off for so long. I think this is one of the most beloved books on BookTube. Like, I feel like everyone who talks about this book talks about how much they love it. They give it 5 stars. Like, I feel like everyone who reads this gives this 5 stars. And so I was so nervous going into this, being like, what if I don't give it 5 stars? Will everyone hate me? And so I finally read it, and I gave it 4 stars, which is not a bad rating, okay? Please don't come for me. I know people are very defensive of this book. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was really well written, but it just wasn't quite 5 stars for me, but it was 4 stars, and that's a great rating, okay? So don't be mad. But if you don't know, this book follows first it follows this journalist named Monique, and she doesn't work at a like super famous magazine, and she kind of wants more for herself. And then she is contacted through her work that Evelyn Hugo, who is this like extremely famous actress, and she was extremely famous in like kind of the golden age of Hollywood, so in the like 50s and 60s, and she is contacted by her because apparently Evelyn Hugo wants to have a sit-down interview with her. And everyone is confused because they don't know each other, they've never met, there is no reason why Evelyn would want to talk to this random journalist. So she goes to talk to her, and it turns out Evelyn wants to have like a tell-all interview with her, and she wants to tell her life story. So she's like, okay. And we know that there is some connection between them, but we don't find out what it is until the end. And so the whole book is basically Evelyn telling her story to Monique, and then we kind of also see glimpses of Monique's current life and stuff like that. So I really did love this book. I didn't like it quite as much as Daisy Jones and the Six. Like, that book just holds a special place in my heart. I thought this was amazingly written. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing. Like, I find it's just so easy to read. Like, I can easily read like 100 pages and, you know, feel like I read 2 pages, you know? Like, it goes by so fast is what I'm trying to say. First of all, I ended up guessing what the connection was between them, and I kind of like, I was proud of myself, but I also was kind of disappointed because I really wanted to be shocked at the end of this book, and I wasn't. I was just like, oh, that's what happened. Oh, okay. So I was a little disappointed that I was able to figure it out, and normally I can't figure things out, so I was like, who am I? And also, I don't want to spoil anything in the book, but there was an element in this book that really bothered me, and I just could never get past it, and ugh. This book had good representation. Also, Evelyn is bisexual and her love interest is a lesbian, and there is another major character in this book who is gay, so this had great representation also. And yeah, I would highly recommend it if you haven't read this yet. It is worth the hype, maybe not quite as much as some people say, but obviously if so many people have given it 5 stars, then it is probably worthy of 5 stars. Just personally for me, I thought it was 4 stars, and that's still a great rating, so please don't yell at me, okay? Okay. The next book I read in September was another 5-star read, and this was a very controversial opinion because this was our book club pick for September. If you guys don't know, I am in a book club called The Whiners with some of my friends on BookTube, and our book club pick this month was The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And if you saw our live show, and if you didn't, I will link it down below for you guys to check it out if you want. But if you guys saw our live show, you will know that, well, mainly 2 people in our book club really hated this book. I think I liked it the most. I'm the only one who gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved this book. It was so good. Like, okay, so I read The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt last summer, and I thought it was a good book. It was just way too long in my opinion, and I think I gave it 3 stars because it just kept going back and forth between being really, really good and being really boring. So I was a little nervous going into this book because I thought that maybe I would feel the same way about this book, but in my opinion this book was leagues better than The Goldfinch. Like, so much better. I thought Donna Tartt's writing was better. It was so good. I loved her writing in this book. I kind of wish, I kind of want to get a physical copy and reread it and then be able to tab it because first of all, I'm obsessed with tabbing now, but I did read it on my Kindle. So I mean, I did highlight a few things on my Kindle, but it's not the same as putting a tab and then being able to see the tabs, you know? So I do want to get a physical copy and tab it, but yeah, I thought it was so well written. Oh, I always forget to say what books are about. So how do you even explain this book? I don't want to say too much because all I knew about this book before I read it was that it is dark academia, and that's about it. So I don't want to say much more than that, but we are following this guy named Richard, and he moves to Vermont to go to this, not a super prestigious school, but like a well-known school, I guess. I don't know. And he wants to take Greek classes there, so he gets into this Greek class, and it's very like secluded. Like when you're in this class, this is basically like you only have one teacher for the whole year, and you're only with the same like 5 or 6 students the whole year, so they're very isolated. So he gets to know this group of people in his class very well, but they were already a group before he joined, and so he starts to notice that like it seems like they're keeping secrets from him, but he doesn't really know what's going on, and so he's trying to figure that out. And then a lot of things are revealed and it's crazy. Like the things that happen in this book is crazy. Like, oh my god, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time because I could not anticipate what was gonna happen next. Like things just kept getting revealed and I was like, what is going on? And oh my god, I just loved it. And I also found it was the perfect book to read in fall because especially the first part of the book, it actually takes place in fall, and Donna Tartt's writing I found was like so atmospheric and so descriptive, and I was like, I'm there with you. We're at this cabin in the woods and it is fall and I am feeling the fall vibes. Like it was great. So I know not everyone loved this book, but I really loved it. I thought there was just so much intrigue, and I know there are definitely problematic elements in this book. Like Richard, he is definitely a problematic person, and like some of the things that happen in this book I definitely do not agree with, so I hope that that is clear. If you have read the book, I hope you don't think like, oh, Darian agrees with that. Like, that is not what I'm saying. I definitely do not agree with some of the things that Richard thinks or some of the things that people do, specifically something that is revealed at the end. I definitely don't agree with that. If you've read it, you might know. So I just want to make that clear in case you think that I'm okay with those things, because I did not like that. But yeah, I loved it. I just thought it was so interesting to follow these characters who are all such bad people, but like, and they don't even think that they're good people. Like, I'm pretty sure they know that they're bad, and I don't know, I just found them so interesting, and it was just kind of different to be in the minds of these horrible people for a bit, and I was like, wow, I guess I'm a pretty good person. Like, it just made me feel better about myself, you know? Anyways, so yeah, so Secret History, I gave it 5 stars. I really loved it. I do recommend it, but I know this is a controversial book, so I guess it really depends what you like. But if you like dark academia, I think you would really like this book. So the last book that I am going to be talking about today is actually my first DNF ever. I never thought I would DNF a book. I've always had such a hard time with the idea of DNFing books, because in my head I'm like, once I start a book I must finish it, like, because what if it all of a sudden gets better before the end? Like, what then? And then I'll never know, which I know it's stupid, but that's how I've always been. But this book, I had to stop. Like, I just had to stop. And I don't know if I'm gonna get hate for this or something, but the book that I DNF'd was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins, which is the Hunger Games prequel. Don't look at me. So basically what happened is I was listening to the audiobook of this book, and I would listen to it when I went on my walks, and it got to a point where like I would be going for a walk and I'd be like, do I feel like listening to it? No. So then I just wouldn't listen to anything, and then that kept happening for like 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks I was like, okay, like am I gonna pick this up again, because I keep just refusing to listen to it when I go on my walk. So I decided to just stop, and I was actually pretty close to the end. I think I only had like 3 hours left of the audiobook, but I just could not do it anymore, and I just did not care about what happened. Like, the only interesting part of this book I found was the actual games, but we weren't even in the games, so they weren't even as interesting as like the games in the original trilogy. So I don't know what the point of this book was, honestly. Like, if I had finished it, I probably would have given it a 2.5 stars, because I don't think it's a bad book. I think it's well written. Like, Suzanne Collins is a great writer, but I just didn't see the point of having a book about President Snow. Like, if you're gonna have a Hunger Games sequel, a Hunger Games prequel, like, I would much rather read about Haymitch's games or Finnick's games. Like, hello? Imagine how much money you would make from writing a Finnick Hunger Games book about his games. And, like, you could talk about how he met Annie. Oh my god. I would love it. So I just didn't care. Like, President Snow was so, well, he's not a president in this book, but he was so unlikable. And obviously because he's the villain of the Hunger Games series, but I just hated being in his head. I just thought he was so gross. Like, every time he talked about Lucy, or Lucy Gray, ugh, I just wanted to get out of his head. Like, I didn't like it. When the games ended in the book, I was like, oh, are we close to the end? I didn't think we were close to the end, but I guess we are, because what else could you possibly talk about after the games end? And then I looked, and I still had like 6 hours left to listen to, and I was like, what could you possibly have left to talk about for 6 hours? Like, oh my god. And then, of course, like, after the games, I was like I was so bored. I just didn't care, so I just had to stop it. So I'm sorry. I know Sasha loved this book. I'm sorry, Sasha. I don't think Sasha and I have the same reading taste, because she hated Secret History. I loved it. I hated, well, I didn't hate it, but I didn't like Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and she loved it. So I'm sorry, Sasha. You have valid opinions, okay? Don't listen to me. But yeah, I was just kind of bored, and I just never wanted to listen to it anymore, so I decided to stop it, and I can just look up how it ends if I really feel like it, and yeah. So my first DNF, I'm a big boy now. So those are the books that I read in September. Oh, I wanted to mention that I did start The Way of Kings in September. I may have only read like 80 pages, but I did start it, and I will continue it hopefully this month. We'll see how that goes. So I did want to mention that because I forgot to mention that in my October TBR, that I will hopefully be continuing that. So those are the books I read in September. It was a pretty like okay reading month. I didn't read a lot, but I read some pretty good books, so it balances out. So yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you read in September. What was your favorite or least favorite book in September? Have you read any of the books I mentioned, or are you planning on picking them up? I would love to know. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys soon with another video soon. Bye!